more than what they gave to you. Trillions moving, don't get left behind. Preserve the well, protect what's mine.
Hi, this is Thaddaus Dawson. Welcome to the Thaddaus Dawson 10K BA podcast. As every week, I'm extremely excited, but today is very, very special to me. We have our guest, Sule Welch, the original Bruce Leroy. Sifu is a martial arts expert across multiple disciplines. He is very impactful and trains a lot of industry leaders here in Atlanta. I actually learned about him while doing an appraisal. I saw someone had a Wing Chun dummy, and I started asking them about Wing Chun. And so they proceeded to tell me about Wing Chun and his practice. And with that, I ended up taking Wing Chun from Sifu Sule. And it has just been a very amazing experience on this 10K journey. He doubles not only as a martial art expert, but during the sessions, he's somewhat of a therapist as well as a coach. Because Wing Chun was invented by a woman, it is for people that have smaller frames. And I'm not that tall, as you all very well know. However, Wing Chun is not based on size. It's based on energy and redirection. So with that, I utilize some of that in my practices to fight challenges that are bigger than me, which is what we've been embarking on in this 10K journey. And so I have been able to share that journey and the challenges during sessions with Sifu Sule. He is originally from the DC DMV area. He was born in DC, raised in Virginia, and he also is a graduate of Morehouse College. Now, I don't know how we keep getting inundated with all these people from Morehouse, but I guess it's kind of hard when you are in Atlanta. And, of course, he took the Morehouse 101, how to be the most important person in the room course. However, he does that and he took the humility course. My brother and his friends didn't get that part of the education. I think they added that after my brother graduated. So welcome, Sifu Sule Welch.
Thank you, Thaddeus. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity and have admired your work and what you're doing. And it's just great to spend some time here with you this afternoon and share a little bit about how we got connected, as well as the training that's been near and dear to me. And I'm grateful to be able to extend it to other people so that they can use it in their life.
Yeah, we'd love to see that happen. And you have so much context in history that we learn about. Hopefully we can tap into some of that. Actually, the center that you're in is in Atlanta, not far from the AUC Center. And I know you're right around the corner from the AUC Center, but the building that you're actually in, you renovated it, but it used to be the old Atlanta Teachers Credit Union, I believe. Speak on that history and how significant that building is.
Yes, it was many things. So it was a credit union. It was a wellness center. It was a daycare center called Ashby Street Learning Academy. But first and foremost, it was the headquarters for the Georgia Teachers and Education Association. At that time, when the building that the majority of our programs are held in, the martial art programs we have, was run by Horace Tate. And Horace Tate is a household name here in Atlanta. We are located, as you said, in Vine City, just off of Joseph E. Lowry Boulevard, which then was Ashby Street, not too far down from the Atlanta University Center. But Horace Tate was the senator of District 38, which is the West End. During the time, he was still actively involved as the executive secretary of the Georgia Teachers and Education Association. And the reason, again, the and Education Association is important is because there was a Georgia Teachers Association, which was a majority institution. The Georgia Teachers and Education Association was Black Teachers Association only, funded by Black teachers in the South because they were getting underrepresented in terms of the government funds that were supposed to be coming their way to help Black teachers in the South. So they took it upon themselves to create this organization and manage it and even raise the money to build the building that we later renovated when we found it in 2020. Took us about 18 months, so we didn't move into it until 2022 and officially open for business. But thanks to
And how many square feet do you have there?
15,000. So yeah, the building, the main building I keep referring to where the martial art classes are held, is attached to the first building that the Georgia Teachers and Education Association purchased. That I believe was a church when they purchased it, and it's still stands today. We lease that building out to small businesses, and it looks a little more like a red brick house. And I believe, I could be off a little bit on the dates, but I think they were in that space about 5 to 8 years before they were able to raise enough money and build this larger building that is 3 stories. So all of that together, plus the parking lot and the backyard area, is 15,000 square feet.
Now, you trained some of the leading industry leaders in Atlanta. I know you trained some of the leading real estate industry leaders throughout Atlanta, and they use you as a resource for one, for personal safety and wellness, but also for the principles that you teach while they are able to implement them in their daily life as well as their practice. Can you speak to me a little bit about the philosophy that you use when doing that? Because you want us not to just practice, but to implement those in your daily life and routine with family and business.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Martial art to me, I'll speak directly to the principles, but I think it probably is worth, kind of adding my umbrella statement to that. For me, martial art as a practitioner now of over 40 years has been a way, or a lens, if you will, to view just about everything. I had a previous career in the corporate world. I've worked in the Fortune 100 companies in every division, from human resources to sales to marketing. I do hold an undergraduate degree in business from Morehouse College, but I also, after I worked for 5 years, I think I heard you cheering. But anyway, after about 5 or 6 years, I went back and got my master's in business as well, with a concentration in marketing at Georgia State. And I just layer that in to say, through education, through navigating my way through the business world and figuring out that really where I could best serve the community was not in the corporate sector, but in serving rather than product based sales, if you will. I don't really call what I'm doing selling, but the service end of things is really where my heart was. And as I kept looking at that and trying to figure out how to craft those plans and figure out how to make that a sustainable business, I kept coming back around to martial art because I started to learn more about myself, that I viewed most things through that lens. And that lens being now what a lot of people call a mixed martial artist. All that means to me is you can train in just about anything and make it work for you. It doesn't necessarily mean sport or combat, which is typically how it's portrayed in the media. For me, it was a platform to navigate finding my way to, again, kind of best represent myself. So it goes back to kind of 3 core principles. You and I talk about them a lot in Wing Chun. It's focus. In Wing Chun, they say focus on the center line, right? Because that's a principle that's involved in that system. It is typically suited for a smaller frame person to deal with a larger person. So if you focus on the center line and then make sure you apply the second principle, which is foundation, always make sure your foundation is solid and you're sinking into your energy, which obviously comes from the earth because we stand on 2 feet. So sinking into that, you're able to better manage challenges in all forms. So those 2 principles, the center line or the focus and the centering and the grounding, aren't unique to Wing Chun, but as the more I studied other arts, the more I realized it applied to every art and it applied to every culture. My diverse background in martial art training spans Chinese culture, Korean culture, Japanese culture, Afro-Brazilian culture, French culture. And I've literally gone into training modalities with people as close to the source as I could get, and sometimes traveling to those places to really try to understand it, not only on a philosophical level, but a historical level. Because at the end of the day, what I really appreciate that all my teachers instilled in me was an understanding of the history. If you understand the history, you can understand the people. If you understand the people, you can understand the time period. And then you can get into how those people at that time expressed themselves or navigated life's challenges. And that comes down to both mental and physical approaches to dealing with anything. So at the end of the day, for me, martial arts is primarily mental, about 80% of it, and only about 20% of it is physical. So when I say that to most people, they always ask, well, then why do you exercise so much? Why do you work out? Or why do you train so much? It's the manifestation of what you've already created in your mind to kind of test yourself to see if you can carry it out with your body. But it doesn't work the other way. So when I'm training, I'm not training at a level to break my body down, which I'm also very familiar with because I was an athlete through college and through high school. And I understand what that's like too. So a number of the people that I've been able to train, you mentioned in the real estate industry, that's true, but also in the corporate sector, education, even nonprofit. I work with a lot of people in those sectors. They all run at a pretty quick clip. And so what that means is I liken that almost to a professional athlete. Sometimes they're putting their body physically through more than it can handle. And the only way you counterbalance that is to have a strong mental focus and be able to go back to that mental training to allow your body, A, to heal and catch up, but also to probably carry out some things that aren't the norm. And fortunately, I can say that, I've been able to navigate a few challenges myself that way and pass those things on to the people that I try to help.
I believe I've been definitely a beneficiary of the mental aspect of it when you're looking at a challenge that's much bigger than you in an industry that's much larger than you, and the level of impact that we have had as a new and smaller organization to be able to reverse the energy and have an impact has been just profound. And some of that redirecting the energy I have learned in my practice, as well as the mental and going over the basics on a daily basis. I know I get your little, first of all, nobody knows that you are the worst joke teller in the history of joke telling. You
You want
have
a
the
sample?
worst daddy jokes. No, please, not on this show. We don't have enough time. We really don't have enough time for that. But they always make me laugh. But you always check on me with Simnem. Did you do your Simnem Tao today? And that
Yes.
is the basics, and it's foundational. And that is one of the things, even in appraising, if you have the basics and you have a good understanding and a strong foundation of learning, you can pivot and figure out all challenges in the space with critical thinking. And in the educational realm, there's just not, that's not being taught. Everybody wants to point and click. And I equate that in the martial arts is as in the commercial retail martial arts, where they're selling and profiting on belts, where you can be a black belt in 10 weeks. And then you run out and get your behind whooped and realize that your training was not what it needed to be. However, I digress. But one of the things that you talked about as well is all the places that you have traveled to get a foundational understanding in the practicality of the martial arts. I know that you've been to Japan, China,
Not
Brazil.
China yet. I'm going to China
Not
soon, but I
China
haven't been
yet.
to China
Okay,
yet.
Brazil, France. Have you been to France? So,
Yes.
and they all have different martial arts, and some of them have been somewhat of a coded language in order to be able to preserve their culture. And the cultural competency challenge is something that I just recently wrote about and have been talking about in the appraisal space. So meeting people where they are, I think you do an excellent job of that. And I'd like for you to talk about the places you've been, but also all of the different martial arts that you have studied. It's just amazing. And I believe you are an expert in all of them, which sometimes I'm wondering because I think I can beat you for real. That's a
I'll be
joke.
happy to go into
You
the
find that
systems that
funny?
I studied. Well, I started with a Korean system called Hapkido.
Okay.
Hapkido, and that means the way of coordinated power. Um, it came into the mainstream here in the States probably in the early 60s. Um, I was trained not by a Korean practitioner, but an American practitioner who had a depth of knowledge in a variety of arts and also had military and professional fighting experience. So he was an independent person, not a franchise school owner, which worked to my advantage because my family didn't have the resources to pay for a larger franchise type school, but he was in the local community center before he opened his first school. And so we had the unique opportunity to kind of be his first class that a couple years later, when he was able to open his own studio, we were right there to see all of it and be a part of that growth and a part of not only his challenges, but just his gifts as a teacher. And I'm happy to say he just retired last year, and we were able to attend his retirement ceremony. And I'm still in very close contact with him. His birthday was Wednesday, this past Wednesday, and he's doing well and has left the DMV area and retired down to the south. But his variety and diverse teaching background, which is why I mentioned that, kind of gave me a non-traditional view of martial art training, and that he encouraged us to really explore, stay educated, and share our knowledge. So because that was in, the 80s, the early 80s, there was no internet, there was no, computers. So I learned a lot about and fed, I should say, my curiosity, which led me to learn more about other martial arts through reading books and magazines and just talking to the people that he would bring in to train with us. And when we used to go to different events, because he had a network of martial artists through those things that he was involved in, who would, love to talk to little kids, especially if you were just asking tons of questions. They fed that curiosity, and that community approach really always stayed with me. Applying that led me to read 3 books that are still in my personal library, and they were written by a gentleman named Danny Nosanto. And I should say my first instructor was John Thomas. Danny Nosanto is the author of the 3 books that I mentioned, and he is still today the designated, one of 5 designated students by Bruce Lee to pass on Bruce Lee's system. However, he was also a decorated martial artist in his own right, even before meeting Bruce Lee. And among the 5 people that Bruce Lee certified to carry on his method in his lifetime, which was very, short, passing away at 33, Guru Nosanto is the only one who still remains, and he turned 89 2 weeks ago. And I'm still very close to him. I was in California last week training with him for 5 days, and I've stayed a part of his organization since I joined it in the early 2000s. But I met him in 1989 here in Atlanta after reading about a seminar in Black Belt magazine that he was giving with another Wing Chun practitioner who had a school in Atlanta. So I learned about that Wing Chun practitioner from his book, even though I had heard about Wing Chun, watching movies and reading about it in other books. I didn't know of any instructors in my DMV area. So I kind of came here on a mission to come to Atlanta with a couple of my friends. We drove down. They weren't interested. They hung out and saw the sights.
You were still in high school then, right?
Elementary school, man. But I drove early.
Elementary, okay. Now, did they also teach you how to weaponize your jerry curl at the time?
At the time, but it burned off.
Obviously.
Much like yours.
I never had one, though. I never had one. You probably had that.
You still got the shine.
Yeah, I still got the shine. I still got the shine. I still got the shine.
Put me some activator in the mail.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
So, yeah, coming down to meet them literally just blew it wide open. That seminar.
Is that what made you go to Morehouse?
Yes and no. So that seminar had 5 martial arts featured. And at that time, I had only trained in Hapkido. But I was coming specifically to explore more about Junfan Gung Fu and Jeet Kune Do, which are the 2 systems closely connected to Bruce Lee. And then, of course, Wing Chun. What was also offered in addition to those 3, and those 3 were offered by 2 people. The Junfan, the Filipino martial arts, and Jeet Kune Do, that was all offered by Guru Nosanto. The Wing Chun was offered by Sifu Francis Fong, who is my Sifu to this day. And he was the one who was located in Atlanta. Guru Santo was still located on the West Coast, but he had traveled to Atlanta and would come here 3 times a year to offer that seminar. This was just my first time coming to it. Also in that seminar, however, they had brought Guru Santo's Muay Thai instructor, referred to today as Thai boxing, Arjan Surtasut. And he was the one who was really kind of single-handedly influential in bringing Muay Thai to America in the early 60s, and teaching it and kind of spreading it throughout. And that today is what is known as the World Thai Boxing Association. He's the founder and president of that. And it's still thriving thanks to the efforts he put in early on, and also the efforts Guru Santo put on to kind of bring him to the forefront. And then the other system that was offered was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it just, again, I was like, what? This is all the stuff you read about, but you never got to see anybody do it. Again, no internet. You might see some clips in a magazine lining up this step, this step, this step. But there weren't any videos even put on about this stuff. So to literally be in the room for 3 days, it was 12 hours a day, and you could go to each, one of these modalities and train as deep or as little as you wanted. I was literally blown away. So to your other question, I was applying to multiple colleges at that time and had been accepted to a few, but with Morehouse, legacy, both in my family and wanting to really lean more towards an HBCU, and then stamping all this martial art right here in Atlanta, everything else was extra. I didn't even look at anything else after that. So yes and no, that did have bearing on me coming to Morehouse. So those systems, the Muay Thai, the Filipino martial art, I won't go into a word salad of all the arts that are in that. I'll just say Filipino martial art, or FMA, or Kali. That's how it's most popularly referred to. Wing Chun, Junfang Gung Fu, Hapkido, all of those systems I am certified to teach. And then I'm also a teacher of Tai Chi Chuan, and a professor in Boxe Française Savate, which is a French system, introduced to me by Guru Santo, because I met his teacher, who I started bringing here to Atlanta in 2018, I believe. 2017, I started bringing him to Atlanta. And then also Capoeira, which is an Afro-Brazilian martial art that I was introduced to in the early 2000s, and went to Brazil to study with teachers there and understand more about that art 2 times over the course of about 2 years, until my instructor, Mr. Muriel, moved to the United States, specifically to Atlanta, to continue to train me. And I'm still grateful for him, and he's still here to this day, training and thriving and carrying on that legacy of capoeira. So those are some of the arts that I teach here at the Welch Experience.
And how I look at it, and how like you look at everything through a martial arts lens, I look at everything through a valuation lens. And what I'm always amazed at in the valuation space is people, the ability to think. I think what I see in you is all the different practices that you've done. You're able to use critical thinking and mix them in together. What I don't see in the appraisal profession is critical thinking skills. They have been somewhat diminished, especially in the residential sector. It's all point and click. And why it looks like it reminds me of martial arts is because everybody defends how their teacher taught them. My teacher said, teacher! And they'll be still using adjustments from 20 years ago, 2,000 square feet for a bathroom, or 5,000 square feet for a room, as opposed to utilizing critical thinking and data science in order to modernize the process. So that is my parallel for real estate valuation and martial arts. Everybody talks about their teacher like their teacher was the greatest teacher of all times. And a lot of times in this particular space, you can't teach something that you don't actually know. So people are not armed. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But
it doesn't stop a lot of folks. The information today is so powerful. You can get it and look at it real quick and then try to pass it on. And that I love that parallel you made. It's exactly key to being able to navigate not only the martial art but life, right? I mean, if you're not going to spend the time to really understand something on a deeper level, how can you expect to grow or improve in anything? And I credit that thinking model, honestly, to Bruce Lee, because at his time, obviously I didn't train with him. I trained with the person who trained with him, but it's documented over and over the number of books that he had in his personal library. I think over 6,000 some odd personal books. So as a researcher, as a thinker in this martial arts space, that's where he was way ahead of his time. And he didn't subscribe to there is one way to do something or this style has all the answers. And because of that, a lot of people took issue with the things that he was saying. And so I feel fortunate to have, trained with people who were influenced by that thinking, because what I can, thankfully say is that I've never run into a teacher or spent any, I shouldn't say run into, I definitely run into them. I've never spent significantly a lot of time training with a teacher who is very myopic in their view. I've definitely met them. And then I'm able to quickly say, because of my primary influences, a bunch of teachers who are very open-minded, that's just not a fit for me. It's not worth my time or energy to argue them down. The good news is they really believe in that thing. For me, though, I already know that's not going to work because I'm interested in way more than that. And that goes back to, again, the mission of the Welch Experience and the Welch Center that we have. We intentionally brought it to the community here in Vine City because it's not represented anywhere here. You still have people in the martial arts space, in recreation spaces, in business spaces. You mentioned real estate. That narrow viewpoint exists everywhere. But a lot of people still, even some of the folks that I train, feel like, certain things only belong to certain age groups. That's another myth I'm here to dispel. A lot of people say, well, yeah, I did martial art when I was a kid and I can't benefit from it anymore. Thankfully, there's people like yourself and some of the other people that, you and I know who go, this can apply to everything that I'm doing and make me a better person overall. I don't have to be, 5, 6 years old, wearing the white pajamas and getting a belt to do this thing. That's okay too. It has its space. But if you did that, a lot of times you think, well, I can't do it anymore. Or you'll say, if you're a parent, my kid should do this, but I'm not going to do it because that's, for them. They need discipline. They need focus. They need self-esteem. They need critical thinking skills and how to pay attention. Thaddeus, I got a lot of adults who still struggle with the same thing. And that's okay. But if you don't have a place to, train those things, how do they ever improve? And as an adult, we do have to kind of stay in our lane. If that means earning a living, running a household, running a business, working for a business, that is your lane. But you also have a responsibility to yourself to step outside of that, find some things that feed, you personally from a health standpoint, and that means mental and physical, to kind of get out of that rut. And I just feel like martial art, obviously I'm biased, is the best way to do that because it can apply to so many things. And it won't make you narrow-minded as long as you don't align yourself with someone who's narrow-minded.
Well, it's interesting you should say bias because that's what I was delving into next. In the appraisal bias space, which, I do a lot of work in, I would say probably 90% of it is not actually bias. It's ill-prepared, ill-trained, and folks haven't taken the time to learn critical thinking. And if you add bad appraising and bad technique to lack of critical thinking to a system that is systemically not beneficial for people of color, it's exacerbated. But back to the myopic thinking, like there is one way to do it. There's more than one way to do it, especially today with technology. You have the ability to utilize data science, evidence-based, data-driven analysis. But because the older folks who were doing the teaching and training wasn't available when they started, and they haven't updated their skills even through continuing education. So they're teaching the new people outdated methodology. So that's one of my disappointments, that now we have all of this so-called appraisal diversity, but I believe they're setting students up for failure, teaching them outdated practices and methodology. And to that point, you can utilize the data science. Even Harvard now has a free course on Python. So that allows you an introductory for data science, which is what is needed to actually modernize the appraisal process. So I believe we're at a nexus Now,
Yeah.
all types of industries, and in the process of a reconstruction, because systems as we've known them are being blown up and decimated. We cannot rely upon what we have utilized in the past. It's definitely going to be necessary to do something different, and it's going to be a cooperative effort. It's going to take everybody, but it's going to be you're going to have to be open minded, and like you said, you're going to have to use some critical thinking skills. So this is where I am at in shifting the energy and redirecting. We're in the process of new formatting coming available, but the new formatting, the appraisal, the new UAD appraisal update is how it's updated. They say it's modernizing. It's really not modernizing the appraisal process. What it's modernizing is how to collect the data and information. So
Mm,
it's the equivalent of you taking a shower and putting on the same old clothes. Uh,
mm.
are you fresher? Yeah, but are you really fresh? So the way the data is being collected and disseminated is somewhat different. And again, we are excited to be a part of the future in offering solutions, but the solutions are based in simnum simplicity, and practicing the basics, and then being able to maneuver and actually apply them. So
Yeah.
everything that you're doing, as well as is helping, we struggle with the same things as people, but the ability to be able to grow. And I know several of your students have been parents of some of the younger students when they've seen the benefits of how their kids have been able to grow. And I know that that's got to be extremely rewarding. Last week, we welcomed back the kids at Best Academy. You actually did a session to my entrepreneurial class last year at Best Academy, and we'd love to
Yes.
be able to get you back on the schedule again today. But in
Let me know
welcoming them,
when. That was fantastic.
them back last week, there were two students, former students that graduated in 2018 that almost brought me to tears. One is now a detective, and the other one is a analyst with Deloitte. And so my question to them was, you all are missing work for this. Shouldn't you be at work? And then he was like, did you used to miss work when you came and poured back into us? And it was, it was, oh man,
Yeah.
it was overwhelming for me. So it kind of brought into perspective all
That
the highs and
validation is
lows,
key.
all the struggles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just so powerful for me. I can only imagine the validation that you feel with the students that you train and the impact that they have on multiple industries.
Indeed. Yeah. I've had one of my assistants from my youth summer camp this summer is a young man who started with me when he was 13, kicking and screaming. He didn't want to come. His friend was already training with me, another young man who was the same age, and the parents knew each other. And the young man who was my student, his parents had been talking to the other parents. Oh, this young man needs to do it. No, all these reasons. And lo and behold, they forced him, which parents have to do sometimes. But within 2 to 3 classes, he really started to benefit from it. And within a couple of months, he was immersed in everything. Fast forward, he is 24 now, scored in the top 10% on the LSAT, is on his way to law school, is working part time to get hours with one of my other students who owns a law firm. And because he has a flexible schedule, and the owner of the law firm also happens to have a business office in my building, he was available to come here and help students in the summer camp that he once took part in as a child. And he did 2 of those summer camps when our studio used to be up in Sandy Springs. So those are those full circle moments that, they come all the way back around when you start doing something that you believe in your heart. And that's why I made this change officially in 2004 to just start pouring myself into martial art full time and leave everything I've been doing on the corporate side behind. And little by little, you start to see those principles transfer over to other people. And when you mentioned a moment ago that, the parent and child dynamic, I started probably less traditionally than most martial art studio owners. There's a lot of money to be made, obviously, with youth martial art, partly because it's untapped and it's low regulation. You literally can do what you said, get some credentials really quick and come to open up a martial art place. Nobody's going to stop you. There's no bar association or medical board that's going to say you don't have your black belt, regardless of how long it took you to get it. But therefore, those schools happen really fast. They're also not even on their own doing, but able to fulfill a need that's being underserved in the public school system. Recess is shorter, PE is an elective, and kids don't get as much physical activity as they used to. So parents are looking for another outlet after school for kids to do something.
That was before the new
And
administration. They're bringing back the president's fitness test now. So
I heard
that
about
might
that,
be
right? But what will
be an
be interesting
opportunity.
is, in all fairness, right, what will be interesting is your student athletes still tend to excel in that because that's something from, 40 years ago. And then it even had a resurgence during the Bush administration when Arnold Schwarzenegger was kind of leading that and bringing it back in. And it went away, so I'm glad it's back. But the point to that is, what about those kids who aren't the student athletes? They're the ones that typically fall into martial art, right? Therefore, there's a big population that does that. All that to say that is, I opened my first school and I didn't teach kids for 4 years. I only focused on adults because I knew those principles could still be valuable for adults who I knew were struggling with some of the same things that I saw when I was in the corporate world. And after doing that for 3 or 4 years, a lot of those adults who had kids could see the difference. And they said, there's a martial arts school around the corner from my house, but I see how it's operated. I'm not taking my kids there. Will you teach my child? And enough of them asked me that I created kind of a first kids class literally in my home basement, because my first studio was in my basement before I opened bricks and mortar. And that's how we built it out.
Does that make you Mr. Miyagi? You're like the anti-Cobra Kai? You're not just selling belts and
little tall.
And then talk a little bit about Spelman. I know you're on staff now as a professor of karate at Spelman. So speak to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So spring semester that just passed, had the honor of becoming adjunct professor there for a self-defense class. Not specifically teaching a martial art. I'm teaching my blend of self-defense. It's called SAFE. Stands for Survival, Wear, Familiar, Escape. I've had that in the market for probably about 15 years. And they were in need of a self-defense instructor in a 4-credit course. So the young women in there can take that for PE credit, and they need PE credits to graduate. So it's a required course. It's not just a fitness elective. And had a great experience.
Too bad you couldn't teach that back when you were in college.
Say again?
Too bad you couldn't teach that back when you were at Morehouse.
I was teaching it at Morehouse, as a matter of fact. I was teaching it as a club.
I'm saying teaching it at Spelman when you were at Morehouse.
No, you couldn't do that. Not at all. You go to class over there, that'd be about it. Then they run you off. Go away. Yeah, so it's been great. I mean, and since you brought it up, Spelman is doing a lot in the non-traditional wellness space, which I got to give them a ton of credit for, because I've looked around and I do my research of the HBCUs that I've referenced or researched rather. Nobody's doing as much variety as Spelman is when it comes to wellness. A lot of HBCUs and majority institutions have a PE credit or two, but that's about it. And it's the traditional stuff. Spelman has self-defense, my course, they have yoga, they have Pilates, they have swimming, they have boxing, all these things you can take for credit. Morehouse still has the same 4 things they had when I was there: badminton, weightlifting, basketball, and maybe swimming, which is kind of sad. And I don't mind, I've talked to people there about how I feel about it. It's really subpar for the facilities that they have now. When I was there, that was before the Olympics. They didn't have, Forbes Arena. They had a small basketball court, but in their defense, the PE teachers saw that we were passionate about it, and they let us do kind of a little unofficial martial art club on the side underneath the gym. And students from that class, that is, are training with me today.
That's amazing. I know You all have many famous alumni, but I know you were excited and went to the grand opening of 14 Steps, and that was
13
the
steps.
third. It was I added an extra because
13.
my stride is too short. I need
No,
an
you need
extra
to add
step.
two, but
Oh, really? Really? That's what we doing now, Seafood?
hey, you went there. I got to stick up for Aaron, man.
So 13 Steps was Edwin Moses' documentary. And
Yes, sir.
because, like you said, you all didn't have the facilities, he took, again, he took and made a science out of running the hurdles. And
Yes, he did.
he got it down to 13 steps. But when he was in school, there were no facilities. So he used to run all through the West End, all through Ashby Street. They didn't even have a track team at that time, I don't believe.
No,
And
it was on the
so,
down for
uh,
sure. They were going to cancel it. And his sophomore year is when he won the Olympics, gold.
yep, yep.
Yep.
So again,
Running literally
uh,
like you said, running around. He said he was jumping the fences at Grady and over Georgia Tech. That's how he learned to hurdle. I always laugh. I'm like, yeah, if you miss that fence, your trail leg would be a mess. He had all kind of
and,
incentive to clear that bad boy. I don't know. I'm
and he
not a
was
hurdler, so I don't know what the difference is between the high school fence and a standard hurdle. But if you clearing that,
he was
proof is in the
undefeated for like
pudding.
what, 20 years?
Oh man, 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days. 129
Which
races, undefeated. Still has not been matched to this day. And you'll be happy to know, because he would allow me to say this, he is a Wing Chun student here at the Welch Experience.
really,
Yes, sir.
since you always like to pass messages to your students, I'm challenging him to a match. No.
Oh no. Can I tell him you got the 26-step method? I'll tell him you'll double his stride.
But I'm gonna need you to lower the hurdle too,
Oh yeah,
just
of course, yes.
just to accommodate just to accommodate my hip. So,
Right, absolutely. Fair is fair. Yeah,
well, I
he's another
really
one of those. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because as a scientist and as a person who is passionate long term about quality of life, he found out about us here and asked. He was doing Wing Chun research on his own. It wasn't something that I went out to seek out alum and figure out how they could come over here. It was a conversation, and he was asking me if I knew anybody that taught Wing Chun. Ironically, so that's how it came
did he
up
go
at
through
a
the
nine.
Morehouse Index, or that was at the
No,
movie,
we were
or
at so he's the chairman of
oh
the Laureus Foundation. Have you heard of the Laureus Foundation?
no, I thought maybe you all were singing around the old Morehouse, and that's what
That came
happened. No,
after.
oh, that was after. Okay,
Yeah. You know the lyrics. Tell me how it goes.
I I've heard it so many times from my brother. I don't care. I'm trying to erase that. I think I still feel trauma as a result of that.
Good job, brother Dawson. He's indoctrinated you well. No, we were at a quarterly event for the Laureus Foundation, Sport for Good. It's a world sports organization for good, and he's the chairman. And we were just having a conversation about it, and he was interested in Wing Chun when he saw my shirt that said martial art, but he didn't know what I taught. So literally, the rest is history. That happened last year around November, December, and
Well,
he's
that
a very
goes to your branding. You always got on a Welch martial arts shirt. Um, I haven't gotten one yet. Maybe I'll have to get one, but then I don't want people just randomly challenging me because I don't think I'm up to it. Anyway, I like to thank you for taking out time today to be able to come on to the podcast. I know you have got an extremely busy teaching schedule. You do in person, you do big classes, you do virtual classes. So thank you for taking out this time today. And I'm always amazed that when I'm looking at martial arts movies, I always think that martial arts instructors are very serious all the time. But again, you have the worst jokes ever. So I'm glad you have martial arts to teach and train as opposed to being a comedian.
thank you. Truly found my calling.
And I would like for you to send a message to your son, Aaron, that on site, we're going to do this. I'm going to do the 50-yard dash. I don't think I can get him in 100, but I think I got him in 50.
I mean, you got some inches on him, so that should work in your favor.
Well, again, Seafood, thank you so much for taking out time and coming on to the podcast today. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And
Thank you for the invitation. This has been great. I'm really excited about your work. Hope you continue to do it. It's so needed, so necessary, and always happy to take time and just share a little bit of my passion.
Rick and